we can raise now and pay for 10 years. Now, this 175 billion, initially we thought the pending bills would amount to 175, but they seem to be, it is less than that. So we will settle or offset all the pending bills, and we have paid most of the pending bills under road sector. We started with paying 40%. I think now they are paying another percentage. And contractors, by the way, in many parts of this country have gone back to work. And what we did with this year's budget was to make sure that all these roads which were ongoing and where we have paid the money, we have allocated money in the budget for each of those roads to do at least one milestone, so that we don't just pay these contractors and when they look at the budget there is no more money, then they will take off. So what we said, we agreed with them, we are paying you, once we pay you, come back to work. Then we are providing in the budget in the normal way another, at least one milestone, so that the works continue, so that roads are completed. These roads, when they are not completed, they are not adding any value to the economy. And our plan is to complete most of these ongoing roads within 3 years. And that work is going on. And it could only be done. Our fiscal space, we don't have money in our fiscal space. And we don't have the leverage and latitude to get money from IMF, World Bank. You can see the conditions, and the world in the international market is shrinking. Money is shrinking. If you listen to what World Bank says, and with the new administration in the US, and the whole world is changing, turning their attention. Europe is turning attention to how to save Ukraine. They will not give us money. The US now is looking inwards. They will not give us money. The Chinese will also not just give you money if you are not demonstrating you can pay. So we have also to look inwards. And one way of looking inwards is using prudently the resources that we raise. And this is one way of doing that. So, to me, and someone asked me, after you have raised this, after you have securitized, then so what? We have done all those maths, and we realize the moment we finish paying these historical bills, and we maintain our budget for roads for at least 60 billion per year, we will not accumulate any other further bills on the road sector. Because this amount has been accumulated over the years. It's not something that was incurred in 1 year. So once we clear these pending bills, going forward, our annual budgetary allocation will be able to sustain the budget. So I think I have addressed the issue of securitization.
No, Chair, my question was, how is it costly?
No, actually, by the way, we are resourcing these funds in a very cost-effective manner. If you look at if you go out to get Eurobond, for example, the commercial debts, at the moment you can't get it below 10%. Actually, now it can even be at 11, 12%. The market, I think, is even. This securitization, is it 7.5%? So the rates are very competitive, I'll tell you. We have borrowed money from UAE at 8.25%. That is one of the cheapest now in the market. Eurobond, the latest that we borrowed was 9 points. That is the last Eurobond issuance that we gave. So you can't get money now at this competitive rate of 7.5%. So it is fairly very competitive out.
Chair, also saving on penalties.
We are saving a lot of money. Apart from saving on penalties and interests, we have even managed to negotiate with contractors, because we have told them that, well, we understand you. There's accumulated interests and penalties. And we talked about accumulated interest and penalties, and it was done openly, so that we don't have discretion where one contractor agrees at 50%, another one 30%. That then gives space for collusion. So we said we are going to negotiate with contractors collectively and agree. And they agreed to forgo some of the interest and penalties, And we pay them also some of the interest and penalties accumulated to date, because they also, some of them have borrowed money from local banks, some have borrowed money from their countries like the Chinese contractors. So that, I will tell you, this to me was a good move. And lastly, Chair, on that, if you read Business Daily, I think 2 weeks ago, they reported that the country has started seeing one thing that has that we are seeing is that inflation has started rising again, especially what we call the core inflation. The core inflation is the non-food and non-petroleum or non-fuel inflation. Because you know, food and fuel inflation is driven by a number of factors, including the disruption of supply chain, etc. But the non-core inflation, like other commodities, the core inflation, like other commodities, are the ones that are driven exclusively by purchasing power, by liquidity. So the report was that the liquidity has risen in this economy in the past 2 months. There is higher liquidity. Simply put, more money in people's pockets. You know, people will never come out in Uhuru Park and tell you that now we are feeling money in our pocket. But they will go to Uhuru Park if they are feeling there is no money in their pocket. But when they have money, they will not call a rally at Jacaranda or Kamukunji. It will be felt. So there is that. And you can see now banks have started calling some people now to go and get loans, something that stopped so many years ago. So there is effect of some of these decisions that we have taken. And anyone taking us away is distracting us. And I think that the intention of some people is to distract the government. And some of us, like myself, would not allow to be distracted. I'm very committed and focused, and my eyes is on the ball. Lastly is on the IBC. Was there a question on IBC? Yes. On IBC, will we have enough funds in 2027 to have election? You know, we have no choice. We must have elections in 2027. And even the by-elections. So we have to look for, realign our budgets. There is provision of money. I know IBC is complaining, but we are also telling IBC they must be efficient. The cost of election in this country is too high. So they must be efficient. There are things that we are, you know, we did this with examination. We got a list from the ministry initially, from Kenya National Examination Council, honorable members, to approve for national examination. And the Kenyans, when people were making noise, we have not provided money. We were doing a lot of work on the background. And we rejected that list. It was over 6 billion for items. Later, that has since been revised to below 4 billion. We have almost like saved 50%. Just by asking tough questions around administration of examination. There are things that we bought, surveillance camera last year. Then again we are asked to buy surveillance. We are asked, but we had surveillance cameras last year in the last examination. So even the IBC, we are going to ask IBC questions. There are things that you buy and you don't dispose immediately. Why do you buy them in every election cycle? Electoral cycle, you want new things. Even ballot boxes. These things, even though they looked, who is fighting with them? Why must they be bought every election? So a lot of things a lot of savings can be realized, and we will realize it, and we will run our elections in 2027 with the time required, and I don't think there will be any hitch. Thank you.
Mheshimiwa Nyoka.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to pronounce myself CS. I'm sorry I was late because of another commitment. I'm happy to see you, and I like the John Mbadi I'm seeing. The John Mbadi I'm seeing is the John Mbadi who we agreed that we have to try and fix the mess we have got. So I begin to say that, first of all, thank you for the fact that it looks like you have understood the dysfunctionality of our system. So I'm going to ask you questions. They are actually all of them related. I'll start with what you raised about the reforms that you are conducting. one of the things that these committees of ours in the Senate have been looking at is, number one, let me talk personally, I think the PFM Act has been completely dismembered deliberately. If you go back and see what the county governments are doing, if you look at how they are spending the money and what they need to do. For example, CS, I can give you just a very simple example. That many of the county governments, once they have spent the money, and of course I'm very, very happy that you have introduced the e-procurement. I hope that in your reforms the e-procurement will be linked directly to the IFMI system, and it will be one way in, one way out, and I hope that this system that is supposed to be managing the procurement, the expenditure and the implementation of the programs, I hope in your reforms you are then going to introduce a scenario where, using the systems that you are setting into place, you will now be dealing with the other issues, and that those are the HR issues. If you notice, 70 to 80% of the county governments, as we speak, the ratio between the expenditure funds and what they are spending on HR is incredible. My county of Kisii right now, we are at 68%. And yet when the former governor left, we were at 41. And then when you go deep and find out, Mr. CS, you could send your officers, just look at it. When you find out why is this increment of 25, you find out that actually there are no people employed. So where is the money going? I would like you to check your payrolls. Get a system, a national system that is going to be linked up, Honorable CS, about all the payrolls of the county governments, the national payroll, so that you can check who are the ghost workers and who are not. The second issue that I wanted to say, thank you, you answered it, is on the pending bills. But if you notice, CS, currently if you look at the audit reports that are being given by the county governments, 80% of the county governments have accumulated pending bills since they took over 3 years ago.
160 billion.
All right, now that is so scary to me. Why? Because they have deliberately decided to create these pending bills. How have they created them? Go and check even one county's audited reports. Like my county, 685 payments were voided. You understand? That's why I said that IFMI system has deliberately been hacked, whereby now you find that the county governments are, instead of them paying people according to the work they do, they then, of course, like you said it yourself. So I'm so happy that you've got your finger on it, and I hope you will be handling it. The next issue that I wanted to ask you was, many of us feel, CS, that when we borrow money, when you borrow as treasury, you don't, that's why you find many of us, or many people, even in social media, raising these issues about money recently, which is not where it is going to and what it's going to do. What you've just explained to us completely makes sense. I would never question why you have done the securitization, but can you explain to Kenyans when you intend to do that, especially after you've achieved the results? Just explain to us, like you've done. We are borrowing this money, the agenda is for us to pay pending bills. This is going to be over a period of 10 years, this money, the purpose is this. And on top of that, CS, could you please present the companies that you're going to pay as the outstanding pending bills? I'm sure you can get the connection between all this. That's why I said I can't quite say this point, they are all linked on. Thirdly, the last point I wanted to mention, and that is purely because I'm in the Senate. If you look at Murang'a County, Governor Kenyatta has actually done very good work in on-source revenue collection. You remember last year, I think the year before, he was at 264 million. This year, he's at 1.5. What has shocked me is Kiambu County, of all the counties that exist in this republic, Kiambu has just collected 6.5 billion shillings in 1 year. Now, what I'm asking is this: why do we find it difficult not to either adopt what Kenyatta has done or what Wamatangi has done in Kiambu? Because the results are there. Where you have all these county governments, they have different systems and different financial platforms of collecting revenue, and you know what they pay, 50, 60 million for a system. And yet they don't have results. Look at Nairobi County. Nairobi County is collecting what, 12 billion a year? And yet you know, Nairobi County is expected to collect 125 billion a year. So, can you, in those reforms also, CS, please follow up on some of these things? Because they are all linked. If you look, and I want to say finally, that for us who sit in these committees, how I wish that sometimes when you are sitting with your teams and you're making these recommendations, call us. Because now we know where the food is being cooked. We know who steals the sugar, we know who steals the oil, we know who steals everything, the milk from the children. All those things are with us. So we are making a very special request that when these reforms are being made and when you are making certain changes, I would like to say that please involve the Senate, because we are the ones who are oversighting the reports that are coming from the Comptroller of Budget and the work they're doing. Finally, I want to make a very special recommendation. I don't know if in government it's allowed. If there are two people, CS, who have done our country proud, is the Comptroller of Budget and the Auditor General. Figure out a way how to reward those ladies. They have done a brilliant job. For me, anytime I see a governor complaining about the COP, tunaambia COP finya kabisa. Because they go, they bribe officers. When she's on leave, they bring another officer to sign things for them. When they are assigned, she comes and finds those things are done. There's more that she doesn't tell you. Spend time with her. She will reveal a lot of things that you're going to see. Final point. Could you please clarify to the Kenyan public? Does the President have unaffected access to the consolidated fund without consulting Treasury and you yourself? Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think one question I have not answered from my side is the overview of the loans and the grants that we give to counties. So who owns these grants? The grants and loans that are given, the additional funds that are given to counties are not audited according to what we have seen. And I think there is no trail of money used from those accounts. So can you come up with a way for controlling that kind of use of that fund? Because these are taxpayers' money.
And
so, before you answer, you ask a question?
yeah, it's just an addendum. There's a matter that has been discussed by our committees in the Senate, and it's about the unclaimed assets. All right, the unclaimed assets in the country. All right. There was a discussion that we took, and I'm on this reform aspect. There was a discussion that took place that since devolution has basically devolved functions to the 47 counties, but one of the issues we raised was we don't have to go to 47 counties to have the Unclaimed Assets Authority set up offices. We can actually go to the regional, you remember the 8 provinces, because there are people who have died, their assets are intestate, and nobody knows what has happened to them. Some of the money that is in the accounts of unclaimed assets have never been claimed, and that is another point I wanted to say. Yes, could you please be able to tell the public how much unclaimed assets have you collected, from which area, and how much it was, and what that money has done? Whether some of it has gone to the families involved, or some of it has actually come to the states. But one of the major issues that was discussed is how do we devolve the regions from Nairobi and then take it to the old provinces, so that we are able to zero in on that money, because some of that money is actually in the account and is doing nothing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair, I will try to move a little fast, because there are a number of questions. In fact, Honorable Nyonga really saved his energy for the question. And I want to thank Honorable Nyonga. Honorable Nyonga, first, I want to assure you that the same body with whom you came to Parliament together in 2007. We were elected together. He came through, was it PDP? And I came through ODM. I hold one of the hold distinction as one of the MPs who was elected 3 times on one political party. One political party. In Kenya, it's a rare thing. But we've worked very closely with Senator Nyonga. He knows my stance, and it remains. When I took up this appointment, one of the things that I agreed with the President on is that I remain myself, and he has no problem with it. So I will try to do the best for the country. In terms of PMFM Act, and I was one of the architects or people who really spent almost 3 weeks in Naivasha working on this law. And I would agree with you that there have been many amendments, in my view, that were not our intention then. And I think we need to, this law may need to be looked again into, and it's one of the things that I'm thinking of reviewing while I'm still in office, so that we again refocus. A lot of developments have also taken place from 2012. We may need to again look at the Public Finance Management Act afresh and see if it is meeting the challenges that are emerging, because it is the one, actually it is a super law when it comes to issues finance. When in conflict with any other law, it takes precedence. So I would agree with the Senate on that. On integrating EGP to IFMIS, that is correct. Actually, our intention is we are going to have a system that captures from budgets. The plans must be in this system, procurement, all the way from advertisement to even evaluation to award, so that you can see. You see, Chairman, today we carry those cartons of papers as we tender, and someone just looks at your bid and sees it competitive and just plucks one document out of it. You can even plug your compliance, KRA compliance. So we are even putting it in that information that is available in the government institution should not make a tenderer lose a bid. If it is about tax compliance, we have the capacity to find out from KRA that you are tax compliant, and everybody will see what you attached because it is done online. And again, even if you are in US, you can still bid. You don't have to physically carry the cartons of papers. And this will be linked to payment. And that is why I said earlier that those who are going to attempt to short-circuit the system, you will find roadblock, because when it comes to payment, you will have difficulty, because you are linking this to IFMIS for payment, and you want to make sure that if it is goods that are put in stores, even the stores are linked to the system, so that we have a system that is near foolproof. I'm told there's no system that is ever 100% foolproof. On pending bills, payroll, the other 2 issues. On HR, Senator Nyonga, I want to again give you confidence. This is another area of reform for us, and I think you are not arrived at that time. I said very clearly that we are integrating our payroll system. We are saying there is no reason why we have you deduct money for and you don't remit it. There is no reason why you deduct NSSF, SHA, and you use it to pay as a contractor. We must get this at source. We are going to have a system where this money does not even, is automatically deducted. There is a pushback, and I said that before you arrived, Honorable Nyonga, that there is a pushback. And I have communicated to my team. They have come up with a schedule that we are integrating national MDAs of the government departments in this year. Actually, it was 18th. The 18th is tomorrow. They are supposed to be onboarded. And county assemblies. but they are leaving out county executive. And I said no. Whatever the challenges, you must work around those challenges and make sure that county executives are also integrated, because that is where the problem is. We have parallel payrolls. We don't want to continue that way. So county executives must also be onboarded the same way county assemblies are being onboarded, and the MDS. And so my team is working on that. Pending bills. Yes, I agree with you. You know, the pending bills at the county, and also at the national government, but the counties have even other challenges. First, one of the reasons for accumulation of pending bills, both at the national government and the county government, is over-projection of revenue. At the national government, we have been over-projecting ordinary revenue collection for this country for years. That is why, for the first time this year, 2025-26, the Treasury estimate of revenue is the lowest. Even parliamentary budget officers are at a higher figure. And they were asking us, we should increase the figure. I told them, no. I'm surprised that Parliament is asking us to increase revenue. We are not going to accept over projection of revenue, because the moment you indicate that you are going to collect this much, it will be distributed to the ministries and they will start procuring. And at the end of the day, you are procuring with money you don't have. So clearly, national government, we have taken action. County governments have also been, because of what Senator Nyonga said, there's a law that you cannot go beyond, is it 35% on salaries, so that they can accommodate that. Shareable revenue, there's nothing you can do with it because it is clear, it is defined, you know how much you are getting, there's a formula. Conditional grants coming from the national government or through development partners also are clear and known how much it is. The only way the counties can gerrymander around is own source revenue. So they have been beefing up, bumping up the own source revenue to amounts that cannot realistically be collected. Or even if it is being collected, it doesn't get to the county accounts, you know where it ends. Now, we must deal with that as well. And that is why, Senator Nyonga, just to also answer your other question, which you raised with regards to Kiambu and Murang'a. And we have agreed with we are basically agreed because we formed a technical team jointly with the COG. And we agreed that we should have an integrated system. Because we should also not have a system where Kiambu has one system, Homa Bay has another, Busia you get another, Kwale you get another. We should have a system that is predictable, that operates. And even if we adopt it and it becomes a national system, there is some pushback from some counties. And we are addressing that through IBEC chaired by DP. I'm sure we are going to crack it soon, so that we can have a uniform way of collecting revenue. And again, we also need to, as a country, start thinking of even the various rates and levies that are being charged by counties, whether we should not standardize them. Because, again, this is an area where those who are investing in this country are really complaining that now we are like operating 48 governments. That someone lives, in fact, another guy was telling me that he left with these goats from Kajiado. He thought he was going to Kilifi. So he thought they were very cheap. So he bought the goats. Kajiado was taxed. Passing through Machakos is taxed. He goes through Taita Taveta is taxed. You go through Mombasa, you are taxed. You arrive in Kilifi, you are taxed. By the end of the day, he was asking himself, why did I have to buy goats from Kajiado to bring here at a higher price than even if I sourced for goats locally? Those are things that I think we need to ask ourselves, because investors are complaining. And so, on pending bills, that is what I was addressing, we may, after dealing with the pending bills at the national government level, we may need also to look at the counties. And right now we are dealing with these statutory deductions, especially those that are going to pension funds, because our county pension funds are struggling. The LAP fund and LAP trusts through ACPF, they are struggling. If you look at their books, if you look at their balance sheet, it's heavy on debtors, and those debtors are county governments owing the money that should have been remitted by staff. Some date back to before devolution, but a lot of it is under devolution. Nairobi is over 100 billion. Yeah. Nairobi and Mombasa alone constitute over 70%, 80% of those bills. Nairobi is about 100 or something, Mombasa is 28. As the two counties to come, I think Mombasa came, Nairobi still. We are looking for ways of sorting this out. And it is something that needs to be addressed urgently. Now, on borrowing recently, Senator Nyonga, we are not trying really to be opaque, because even securitization, we have been talking about it. Again, when it comes to financial matters, especially where you are approaching the financial market, you have also to be very careful. International markets, any negativity distorts the market completely. I've seen it, and we see it when we are upon sometimes our politics, Senator Nyonga, and you and I know this, is very toxic at times. And sometimes, you know, this position has mellowed me a bit, but you know how sometimes even I can be cantankerous, and sometimes it is not very good.
Point of information, Chair. You are the one who taught us to make the noise we do.
And I think you are a good student. But now, I will tell you that sometimes you balance these two, because we have also to be open, but there is no information, especially on this securitization, that cannot be made available. We have we used the TDB to arrange it and all that, and it's a very, we went through this process. It took months, to the extent some of us were getting frustrated just to get it right. Attorney General involved, National Treasury involved, everybody else was involved. Even the borrowings that we have done recently, the UAE loan, there's nothing secret about it. We got money from UAE. We got some 8 billion, 9 billion from OPEC in the 2024-25. From UAE, we got $500 million. We got money from African Development Bank, which you translate into Kenyan shillings, the 26 billion. We got money for IMF. The last tranche we didn't get, the first one we got about 700 billion. So all the figures and data is there. From the domestic market, money for refinancing and money for any other new loan that we took, the records are there, and we can make that available. Now, on involving the Senate in the decisions, I can't agree more. What I think we are going to do, like these systems that we are coming up with, Treasury single accounts, the EGP, I think we may need an engagement with the Senate, so that maybe Senate committees which are relevant to this, finance, maybe delegated legislation and all, devolution, we take you through, you understand what these systems mean, how they are going to help us, what are we likely to achieve. On control of budget and Auditor General, and again, I want to say we are supporting these offices. I will tell you, I think we increased the Auditor General's budget a little bit. The only support we can give as Treasury is to support them financially, because they have the powers in the Constitution. We can't tamper with those powers. In fact, they have enough. The only thing to do is to facilitate, and that I would tell you, Treasury is willing, and we have very good working relationship with these two offices. I personally have very good working relationship. Does the President have unfettered access to the consolidated fund? Does he even have an access, not even unfettered? Because you see, as far as I know, there is no, the President is not an accounting officer of any of our votes. So he has no way has operated its fast. Unless it is CFS, Parliament must appropriate. And the appropriation, even myself, I cannot approve any money, even the Controller budget, even the Auditor General, even the President cannot approve any money that is not appropriated by Parliament, except under Article 223, which again is clearly spelled out in the Constitution how I have the power to appropriate it. And the same Constitution speaks to how then I report the same to Parliament for post facto approval. And I will tell you that the period that I've sat in this seat, I have never seen President asking for any expenditure or asking for any access to the consolidated fund. The President, as anyone would expect, may of state, he is accountable to the people of Kenya. Issues that come up that are of concern, he would be involved. And when he's involved, he would invite me for a discussion, and we'd discuss and agree that yes, this one we can finance. And where it makes sense, I have made approval. Subsequently, Parliament has to approve. So there is nothing like the President having, I don't know, maybe you have your reasons why you asked this question, but that is what I wanted to.
Yes, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Purely an innocent question.
Very innocent.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I've also responded to you innocently.
Through you, Chair, unless I receive other information, I will assume that the matter has been settled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, grants and loans given to counties as conditional grant are not being audited. This is sounding news to me, but the way I understand it is some of these grants, the accounting officer is the ministry. If they design, you know, some of the development partners cannot deal with the small units that we have. They know the government of Kenya. And so they can pass the money through the ministry. If the money comes through the ministry, then the ministry becomes the accounting officer. And those are spending units. Those other units are given AIEs. And so the person responsible becomes now the accounting officer at the ministry, who is the PS. And in that case, then the Auditor General would still audit, but now audit it at the national government level. And we have had challenges with that because these World Bank projects, even when I was chairman of Public Accounts Committee, you find the World Bank gives money, the money goes to counties and it goes to their accounts direct, and the accounting officer remains the PS for housing. And then now, when it comes to accountability, you ask the PS to account, and yet the people who have spent the money. Now we start inviting, it was very untidy, as the Public Accounts Committee, National Assembly, starts inviting county staff who should actually go to the Senate. And so I actually left before we made a recommendation. I don't know what Park has done. I think it's something we may need to look into. How do we effectively finance or release this money in a way that accountability is clear? If the money is going to counties, let it go to counties. The accountability is to the Senate and not National Assembly, and that is it. If it is a national government fund, then the national government should have a way of monitoring and controlling how it is spent. I think that is where the challenge is, and it's not. Finally,
yes, on that matter,
yes.
I think the regulation is unclear, and the Auditor General has traditionally, I guess because of a lot of work, felt not obligated to audit one level for some reason or other. I think that's another area that we need to have a method of auditing intergovernmental funds that have gone as additional allocation or conditional grants, so that there is auditing at the user level as well as the ministry through which those conditional grants are passing. Yeah.
Let me take it. Chairman, I want to give a commitment that this is a matter that I'm going to take up with the Auditor General, and we see where the challenges are. Then, if need be, I think we can come up with regulations to be clear on where is the accountability, who takes risk, and smoothen the audit process. Sorry, I almost converted myself to chairman.
Through chair, CS, the issue of conditional grants, which are donor funded and everything, if you go and look at just do an audit and look at who has been given the money, you will see that there is a bias in terms of how these funds are given. I don't know whether we're using data on the poverty index and things like those, or are those decisions political? And my request would be that if there's a way you would have an influence on to how these conditional grants are shared nationally, then there should be fairness and equity in terms of trying to deal with the historical injustice issues. Because there are some people who are getting money and others have never got. And that creates a lot of infighting within our committees, because people are like, why did you get money and yet last year, the year before, and yet us have never, even though that money is a continuance. Some of those funds came 5 years ago. But I was looking at, if you could look at the audit in your reforms and figure out a matrix on how you're going to distribute the money fairly and equitably to all the counties. Thank you.
To write on that, just allow me, because the issue of equity that he's raising, I have also been looking at the way development funds are deployed. I've been looking at affirmative action fund, and CS, I'm inviting you to go and look at how the affirmative action funds have been deployed in this country. And in my view, for somebody who practices human rights, I find it so disturbing that the principle of equity is not being used. The Women Enterprise Fund, for instance, you have a county that received only 50,000. You have another county that received 240-something million. Another one, and in the same region, another one 67 million, another one 40. So you find one region has received nearly 400 million, another region less than 10 million. Now, I have spoken, I've engaged with the implementers of that fund, and of course they'll come up and say, these people did not come up to take the fund. And I went further to ask, do you have funds to facilitate training for Baringo so that Baringo can also have a better uptake? Training for Migori so that they can have a better uptake? Training for Busia? And they tell me, no, we have zero provision for training because Parliament cut off our money and we only have money for salaries. And I was like, why have an affirmative action fund that exacerbates inequalities?
Yeah, so for the affirmative action funds, I agree. You know, there were these funds, when they were first created, there was uniformity or equity, so to speak, including the Youth Enterprise Fund, Women Enterprise Fund. I remember at one point there are regions which repayment was very good, so they then got the advantage of getting more allocation. But I would agree with you that probably over the years, the discretion that is applied by the boards that manage these funds have been misused. So it's something that may need to be relooked into. Senator, I agree with you. I've taken note of that. On the issue of conditional grants, you know, the conditional grants, like even for this year or the last financial year, I've checked. There are different types of conditional grants. Some conditional grants are applied uniformly across the counties to implement a national government project that is implementing the manifesto of the political party. For example, under universal health care, there is also the county integrated industrial parks, aggregated industrial parks, KIPES. This one, the agreement was to start with the 13, then bring more and more and more. So depending on how you moved, because it's a counterpart, there was counterpart funding. So some counties came on board, 13 of them, some even came and started ahead. So right now, the 13 are going on, some are nearing completion. I think the best is at over 80%. Migori used to be the best, Now it's number 2. I think I can't remember number 1 is which county in terms of implementation. There are others like Wajir County, which were not in the first cohort of 13. They came up and started and spent their own money. So you can't leave that one behind. So now, instead of going to the next cohort of 13, we have added 21. So we have 13 plus 21, that is 34. So we are going that way. And the amount applied is unique. But then there are also others like BTC, which we have also to share. And there is one for county headquarters. Some assessment was done, and specific counties were. Yeah, 5 counties were supposed to be funded. But now there are development funded conditional grants, which my understanding is that some negotiation takes place and the development partners express interest in certain specific areas. I know it's my ministry that coordinates all external resource mobilization. I will check if there is any biasness, but I thought it has not been reported to me from counties, especially from the governors, that there is inequity in the way those development partners are financing the conditional grants. I thought it is smooth and seamless. But if there are concerns, then we would address it, because I am one person who believes in equity. Actually, in this country, I keep on giving this example. Let me not bore you in it, but it is the reality on the ground. You go to Tana River and find the children are crossing the river to go to school and eaten by crocodile. 62 years into independence. Yeah, and we find nothing wrong with that. And the mistake of these children is they are trying to look for education. And what they need to help them save their lives is government investment of 100 million. Yet you find billions of shillings going to one specific constituency. Honestly, to provide, even over-provide. You know, when we wanted to give 50 million per constituency for electrification, some MPs said that, what will I do with that money? Because they are almost 100% connected. And yet you come to my constituency and you find it was at 46%. You come to another constituency, it is at 10%. That is the kind of inequality. And this inequality, we cannot continue blaming the leaders of the past. We are continuing with it. We must just put a break to it and ensure there may be no equality, but let there be equity. So that at least if one county gets 2 billion for roads, because maybe they are very much backward, I would also see some 800 million in my county. But having 6 billion in one county, and which county already has even more roads, tarmacs, and you have 50 million in another county, it is unfair, and that is why we cannot develop a cohesive nation. That is why you hear people, if their person is not in power, that is, and that will not stop unless we are deliberate and we ensure that we apply equity, so that it doesn't matter who leads this country, so long as that person can bring good governance and all of us share or partake in the national cake. There was the last question that I was asked by Honorable Nyonka on unclaimed assets. Unclaimed assets has a lot of issues that I think I must reform. One, what was the objective? Even before we go to discuss, the objective of unclaimed assets was not to accumulate resources and put in treasury bills and treasury bonds. It was supposed to help trace and connect these assets back to the beneficiaries. But it appears that has been lost. I know we are now recruiting a new CEO. The moment he gets into office or she gets into office, whoever will be recruited, then we must carry out extensive reforms. This is now one of the richest parastatal in Kenya in terms of resources. And I don't think that is the way we want to go. We want unclaimed assets to be reconnected to the beneficiaries. There are people who are destitute, people who are going berserk in town because they have no way to survive, and their parents left billions of shillings behind, and they can't access it because they don't know. Yeah. So let me leave it there, in terms of evolving.
Before you leave, one question, sorry. I have one question. This is about these 18 parastatals that have been either dissolved or merged, and they are supposed to go. They are actually recommended by the cabinet to go to counties. But up to now, no action has been taken, and I think you have seen giving them some funds. And some of them are supposed to be resolved, some are supposed to be merged, and some are supposed to go to counties. So what's the position of these parastatals? There were 18.
Now, the parastatal reforms is ongoing, and we are going to conclude it in this financial year. You know, again, Chairman, there are certain challenges that we have also to deal with, because one of them is most of these parastatals, the total is 47 going through different restructuring process. Some are going to be dissolved completely. Some are going to go back to the line ministries. Some have devolved functions which must be surrendered. But you know, we have staff issues to deal with, other liabilities to deal with. So we are, the team that is working on this has really made very good progress. And maybe one time, if you invite me to come with a comprehensive answer, I would on the same. But I'll tell you, we are making very good progress. There are also a few challenges, like this water. This one is called water. This one of water. There's one of them, the Water Trust Fund.
Yes.
When it was supposed to be taken back to the ministry, but we realized if we do that, there may be a problem. So we are slowing down on that, because the donors, the development partners, it is exclusively funded, actually, in terms of development budget, from the development partners. And the development partners are the ones who said they want to deal with a standalone institution, not the ministry. So we may lose those funds. And
Yes, on that issue, I think your legal team need to advise you, because IGRTC purportedly moved the functions of the 18 parastatals to counties. No funds followed those functions. So you have a legal position where the functions of those counties, of those parastatals, are apparently now in counties. But those parastatals continue to move, and there is a cabinet resolution to absorb them. My question is, to absorb them to do what? Because if the functions have been devolved, you're talking about even moving them either to an inter-county institution, if they choose to, or actually only retaining those that will be handling a national function, which will be minimal of that. I think that is not neat, and it has left counties wondering, why are we being given functions and the funds are not there? In my silly, I never did well I was not an accountant. I imagine that the basic funds that were in this parastatal would at the very least be the beginning minimum that would need to be added to the equitable share to go to counties now that they've been given the function. I suggest, CS, that the team on this seriously look at that, so that we don't have a repeat of that, what I call not very neat legal position around this issue.
Yeah, so, Chairman, to respond to Senator Catherine's concerns, I understand you, and maybe on this matter we may appear and give a comprehensive answer. I know that there are functions that have been transferred to the counties, and we gave the intergovernmental, we gave them the 30 days when we last met at IBEC to do the costings. But we have a challenge. Funding of the same may come from 2026 because we have already budgeted for 2025-2026. So the funding may be a challenge, but that's something that we are going to discuss once we see the costings. But again, on these state-owned enterprises, you know, one of the reasons why we are doing away with some of them is because they have been a drain to our exchequer. And so if we may look at how then, if we are transferring them to counties and transferring the money, is it solving our problems? Because we want to save the money. We feel they should not operate. But we'll see, we look at how best to, if there are some that are going to discharge their functions at the counties, how best then to facilitate that, have enough resources for them to run in those counties. But most of them, apart from the personnel emoluments, some of them just go. Some of them will just disappear. You know, we have kept in our books so many, let me not use a very strong word, but not very value-adding. I'm trying to look for a softer word. Value-adding state-owned enterprises or institutions as state-owned enterprises. To the extent, you'll find we even have professional bodies. Some of them. You belong, Senator Catherine, to Law Society of Kenya. It's not a parasite. It's not being funded. I belong to Institute of Certified Public Accounting. It's not being funded by the SEC. Yet you get another engineers, they are doing, is a parasite. So you ask, what is this? And many others. And then you find the same place. You know, when you have something like a water harvesting authority, and then you have National Irrigation Authority, and there is a lot of pushback. They still believe that those are supposed to be maintained. But now, if you are harvesting water, why can't you use it to irrigate? You know, that's what we are asking. We merge the two, and we have water harvesting and irrigation authority as one. You harvest water, you put it somewhere, then someone comes now to use it for irrigation. Yeah, I think we have been too liberal. And there was a time, actually we have been around for a while. I think with the Nyonka we are the longest here in this room as politicians and members of parliament. Maybe not as politicians, but as members of parliament. Politician is a very wide terminology. But we have seen every legislation in parliament was coming with the creation of a new body. And that is what brought us to where we are. Lastly, the reforms are many. We have just passed through the cabinet a government-owned enterprises bill, which talks or speaks to how now we are going to run and manage commercially viable government enterprises. 60 of them, or about 60. We must run them different from the way we are running the SOEs, where after I failed as a politician, I become automatic chair of one state-owned enterprise or another, or a board member. We must have a system where board membership is earned on merits, and we bring in private sector to complement the public, the government, in running some of these institutions to be able to look at what is happening with Safaricom. Suppose we left it in the hands of the government. Where would we be? Kenyan is doing much better now because of the element of that practice. And even look at Kenya Pipeline, I mean Kenya Power and Lighting Company. It has come up now. So we are looking at KPC, Kenya Pipeline. I hear people say this is a state, what terminology do they use? State, like a state security, something strategic. In fact, that's what I was looking. This is a strategic investment. These people are just helping us to sell oil, the country, and mafuta. Yeah. Actually, basically transport, because actually the people who import mafuta ni watu wengine. No, they just keep in there and then they just help us in distribution. Yeah, it can be done very well if there is element of private sector. I'm happy the top management of KPC are sold to this idea. And yeah, so let me not belabor the point. I think we've had a good engagement, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the only thing that I want to know is the time frame for.
We have agreed that we need to make some regulations for the PVM Acts to be changed. Is that another? Yeah. Is that correct? So how
that's correct. Especially to capture the.
Yes.
Yes.
So how long? How much time do you require for these regulations? There are many, I know. You know, if we don't do them, we're going to lose a lot of money.
Yes, I think it's talking about the time frame.
Us to put those regulations for Parliament's consideration.
Yes.
I don't think that should take as long. That can take like 2 months.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think take note of that.
I think that in our business, I think that I want to, on behalf of the committee, to thank you so much. Actually, there's been very, very open discussion. I think most of the CS don't do that, and therefore, because you are a politician, I know that's why you open so much. So thank you so much, Ziri, and I have a pleasure to see you again. And the committee will work with you and everybody else so that you see the visual works. I have not said the should be done away with, but it was just the way we felt. The way money is going, you know, means CP is taking place. So sometimes you get quiet. But the police actually is a godsend for this country, especially for those of us who like the head involvement. Thank you so much. Welcome again. Thank you.